What comes to your head when you hear the word feminism? This, or maybe this. And what comes to your mind when you hear Russian feminism?
There are no women's rights in Russia, huh?
All women in my circle, they are not feminists, they don't want any equality, and they say, no, I don't want any equality.
Women in Russia are not afraid to embrace their femininity. They are proud to be women.
By the way, I want to prepare an amendment regarding the ban on feminism as an extremist ideology. Because the special military operation has really shown this. It is a foreign agent extremist ideology.
Does feminism exist in Russia now, or is just a nesting doll of Western ideas? With the tensions between Russia and the West at the high point, it is more important than ever to look beyond stereotypes and understand the real experiences of Russian women. Let's explore the realities of feminism in Russia today. This is Natasha from Russia. Grab your ushankas and let's dive in. In short, feminism does exist in Russia and is different from the West. To understand Russian feminism today, we need to take a quick tour through Russian history.
Just 30 seconds or 1 minute. A brief historical overview.
Don't worry, we won't go back to the time of Catherine the Great, though I'm sure she would have something to say about that. Here is a historical plot twist for you. In Imperial Russia, noble women had property rights that would make Western suffragettes jealous. While British and American married women couldn't own property until the late 19th century, Russian aristocratic women were already running estates and managing serfs independently. Even peasant women in village communes could sometimes control household land, especially widows. But don't be fooled, most Russian women still faced harsh restrictions. This strange contradiction for having some rights on paper while facing some harsher reality would become a recurring theme for Russian women history. Now let's fast forward to 1917 when everything changed. While Western women were still fighting for the right to work and vote, Soviet women were already being marched into factories, universities, and government offices. Surprise! Soviet Union was actually ahead of its time in some ways.
Comrade woman, your country needs you. Equal labor for all. Leave your bourgeoisie kitchen and join the proletariat.
But this was not exactly what Western feminists imagine when they talk about workplace equality. Soviet women didn't have a choice. They had to go to work and then come home for what sociologists called second shift. While men were considered the head of the household in theory, women were running things in practice. From kindergarten teachers to doctors to the cashier at the grocery store, women were everywhere in daily life. So when Western feminists in the 60s were burning bras and demanding their right to work, Soviet women were probably thinking, you want to work? Take my job. So what does feminism look like in Russia today? Well, it's complicated. According to Deloitte, almost 80% of Russian women aged 16 to 55 are employed, a notably high figure. But here is the catch. The higher you go up the career ladder, the fewer women you see. And the pay gap, it's real, but here is where Russian feminism diverges from the Western. In Russia, the feminist battle isn't about should women work or no. They already do. It's not even about sexual harassment or objectification. These things do exist. It's about something much more basic: survival and safety. Russia has a shockingly high rate of domestic violence. According to statistics, nearly 90% of violent crimes occur in homes, not in dark alleys or behind garages. And for years, Russia has no specific domestic violence law. Nothing says traditional family values like pretending that family violence doesn't exist. This is why Russian feminists mostly focus on practical issues like shelters for violence abuse and fighting for legal protections, something that Western feminists achieved decades ago. Another major difference, many Western analysts misdiagnose Russia as simply patriarchal when the reality is more complicated. You see, Russia isn't patriarchal, Russia is poor. This might sound controversial, but economic inequality is the real root of many problems. At the high level of violence we see it's not just about gender, it's about poverty. And they affect everyone, both men and women. The average monthly salary in Russia is about 500, 700 American dollars, a fraction of what people earn in Western Europe or America. Both men and women have to work here just to survive. In Russia, the question isn't about should women work, but about how many jobs does she have to have in order to pay rent. Another thing that confuses Westerners about Russian feminism, Russian women often embrace traditional femininity while fighting for equal rights. What? You can wear high heels and demand equal pay? Impossible! In Russia, rejecting makeup or traditional feminine appearance isn't seen as a feminist statement. It's often just seen as letting yourself go. And this confuses Western observers who equate feminism with rejecting traditional gender expressions. This doesn't mean Russian women anti-feminists. They are just operating in completely different cultural context, where survival strategies include both fighting discrimination and using traditional gender roles to their advantage when it's necessary. Russian feminists also face unique challenges their Western counterparts don't. Many feminist groups were labeled as foreign agent, which is basically a death kiss to any advocacy group. And the government often portrays feminism as a Western import that is here to destroy Russia. Apparently, wanting basic protection from domestic violence makes you a Western spy. Russian feminists also contend with a bizarre contradiction. The government promotes the idealized version of traditional Russian womanhood that never actually existed, while simultaneously relying on women workforce to keep economy going. Women, be traditional, be maternal, but please work full-time, pay taxes, and don't complain. Okay, we talked a lot about women, but here is a perspective that Western analysis usually miss. Russian men are also victims of the system in its own way. The life expectancy gap between Russian men and women is about 10 years, one of the largest in the world. Russian men die from alcohol-related causes, suicide and violence at shocking rates. Patriarchy doesn't mean men oppress women and live the greatest life ever by themselves. It means a system where men die early, commit suicide more often, and drink a lot. They can practice violence towards women, women towards children. It is the situation that makes everyone miserable. Real Russian feminism will benefit everyone, allowing men to express their emotions without shame, seek for medical help, and escape the trap of toxic masculinity that's literally killing them. So what's the future of feminism in Russia? Despite all obstacles, feminist movements persist in Russia. They focus on practical goals, domestic violence laws, equal pay, and challenging stereotypes that harm both men and women. And despite what politicians might claim, the younger generation of Russians are increasingly adopting feminist values, even if they don't always use the F word to describe them. The real Russia is way more complex than what Western or Russian propaganda would have you believe. Russian feminism isn't a carbon copy of Western movements, nor is it non-existent, as some claim. It's uniquely adapted to Russian realities, practical, survival-focused, and shaped by a complicated Soviet legacy that simultaneously freed women and burdened them at the same time. So next time, when someone tells you there is no feminism in Russia, remember, Russian women were balancing their work and family for generations. They just didn't have a luxury of writing long threads in Twitter about it. This is Natasha from Russia, reminding you that understanding comes from looking beyond the stereotypes. And let me know in comments what surprised you the most about feminism in Russia. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to know more about Russia beyond the headlines. Hit the notification bell and see you soon. Пока-пока. Пока-пока.
Cradles old and new. Natasha's vlog shows a splendid view.